Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Hitting the Field podcast. After a bit of a hiatus, we are back to preview the NBA restart, and we are starting today with the Eastern Conference. Jeremy Brener here, and today I can't do this alone, guys. You guys know that, so I brought two of HTF's best and brightest onto the show to talk more about the Eastern Conference. And we have HTS Mr. Basketball, Ross Bernstein. Ross, que paso? How you been?
I've been big chilling. I came back down home for a couple of weeks. I'm about to go back up to Orlando. Just doing a whole lot of nothing, staying home, staying safe. Everybody wear your masks. And I've just been waiting. What do we got? Like 14 more days? And we got basketball back finally.
Yeah, we have
Finally.
about 14 days today. We're recording this on the 14th of July, so
We got 17.
16 days away until the first games tip off, and then 17 games away for the first full day of basketball. And we
Yes.
have also Mr. Chris Wolf on the podcast today. Chris, what's going on?
Nothing much. Just got back from out of town. Got back to Orlando a couple of days ago. Now I'm just kind of like chilling, waiting for basketball.
Yep, that's all we can do in life is wait for basketball, and every day that passes by is one day closer. So, given that we are incredibly close to the restart of the season, we felt it was important to kind of give us a bit of a primer, a bit of a chance to really sit down and figure out where we are currently, where we left off, and what happens from here. And today we go with the Eastern Conference. So the East has had a history of being the lesser of the two conferences, and this year was no exception. This year we only have 6 teams that are that are over 500, and we only have 9 teams that still have the ability to make the playoffs, versus the West, which has 13. So the way the Eastern Conference standings shake out right now is the Bucks are in first with 53 wins and 12 losses. Toronto's in second, Boston in third, Miami in fourth, Indiana in fifth, Philly in sixth. Then there's a huge drop off between 6 and 7, where the Nets, the Magic, and the Wizards, all 7, 8, 9, are sitting in the East. So let's start at the bottom and then work our way up. I feel like that's a good way to go about this, and we'll work our way in. So, in order for this season is unique in itself for many reasons, but for benefits teams that are not in the top 8 is that you don't need to be in the top 8 to make these playoffs, guys. You need to be just within 4 games to be in a play-in series to get into that 8th seed. Now, in the play-in series, it's a 2-game series, which is also something we haven't seen before in NBA history, but a 2-game series in which the lower seed needs to win both games and the higher seed needs to win one. So evidently, really, it's just game 6 and you're down 3-2, and you need to win the last 2 games in order to move on. So right now, Washington sits there, and Washington's gotten a lot of criticism lately because they're going to Orlando, and people are kind of looking at them as a filler team. That's I guess a good word for it, filler team. And Washington is kind of irrelevant when it comes to all of this. But I'm just going to ask you guys, just because I want to give them the courtesy. Is there anything that we need to watch for Washington in this play-in?
Uh,
And we'll start with Ross.
I mean, I guess watch for is the development of like a young player like Huchimura. That's about it. I don't think they need to get within 4 games. Right now, they're 6 games behind. They just don't have the talent. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't think they would have ended up making the playoffs healthy. I think if Kyrie continued to play, the Nets would have made it, and the Magic would have made it. I mean, yeah, it's a wash. You've lost Bertans, you've lost Via at this point. You are a filler team. They didn't want to just have 8, so you knew the top 8. They want to make something quote unquote interesting, even though I think any NBA fan understands that this team just never had a shot. So I think it's just watching the young players develop. That's, I guess, the most exciting thing about this Wizards team right now.
Yeah, I mean they have some nice young pieces. Troy Brown's going to get a lot of run down there, and I'd expect Rui as well to get a lot of run, especially without Bertans, without Brad Beal. Chris, is there anything to add on the Wizards before we move on?
Nah, not really. I mean, it's pretty much what they are. Just young players trying to make roster spots or maybe even get contracts. That's pretty much what it is.
So, what do you guys give the chances of the Wizards making it to the play-in series? Because they still have some work if they want to make it into the play-in series. Put a number on it, 1 to 100, in terms of chances they have to make it into that top 8 play-in series.
I'll give a 20% chance.
20. That's generous.
Yeah, only
I'd
2 games behind.
I'd say
Chris,
about 10 to 15 maybe.
yeah, that's kind of where I was going. Is the Wizards, their schedule going in is not very easy. I mean, they are statistically the worst team going into this bubble. They do have an interesting schedule though, to go in to this bubble. So they start out pretty lax. They get Phoenix and Brooklyn, but then they have to face Indiana, Philly, New Orleans, which I feel like they are a huge mismatch for, Oklahoma City, Milwaukee, and Boston. So like it starts out simple, but then it gets kind of difficult towards the end. So I think the chances for Washington to make it into this play-in game are slim to none, probably about 10%, if that. But it'll be nice to see guys like Troy Brown and Rui Hachimura getting some run, and Mo Wagner, Isaac Bonga, like those guys that haven't had as much of an opportunity during the regular season, but they'll have more of an opportunity now to possibly show off their talents. So we move now into the top 8. The hometown Orlando Magic currently in 8th place. So Orlando was the first team to enter the bubble. They were only 20 miles away from downtown Orlando to Lake Buena Vista, and they are in a different position as well because they're looking to make a second straight playoff appearance. Chances are they probably will. But I mean, it's still a low playoff. They're not contenders by any means, guys. But what is something, Ross, that we should look for when watching the Magic?
I'm really excited to see how Mo Bamba plays and how much he plays. He looks like a completely different person. What did they say? He put 28 pounds on his body. You could just see the denseness in him now. He looks like he could actually contribute in the paint. I think that was a big issue. Yeah, I think it was a big issue before where he was more of a touch player where he just didn't have the strength and the size to compete in the paint. That's just another guy you have that could bang with Vucevic, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of young players. I'm excited to see Markelle Fultz. I still think he's only 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a young player. I'm just excited to see if he gets a chance, get some reps in, get some minutes. I mean, it's a nice young team. Like you said, they're not a contender for the championship by any means, but they still have a lot of nice young players, and it could maybe drive a series to 6 games, maybe if everything's clicking right against one of those top 6 teams that are just leagues ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm really excited to see if Mo Bamba gets some time out there because it seems like he just hasn't had a lot because of injuries and maybe minutes restrictions or whatever. We haven't really had a chance to see him shine. So hopefully we get to see that in the bubble.
So the Magic schedule is I would call the Magic schedule pretty favorable to start. They get Brooklyn, Sacramento, and Indiana in their first 3 games. And Indiana is a team that is better than them record-wise. However, they don't have Victor Oladipo, so chances are they might not be as good as their record claims to be. But also, they get Brooklyn twice, which is super important because, Chris, as you know, Brooklyn and Orlando are within a half game of each other, and 7 and 8 could easily be decided in these 2 games.
Yes, I agree with that. And
how important are these 2 matchups right here?
I think they're very important because I think it's very important for the Magic to get up to 7 and avoid Milwaukee because I do believe that if they played, I assume they're going to play Toronto in the and
Mhm.
in the
It would be a rematch of last year.
I think they actually could somewhat match up decently with them and maybe get a game or two because they've got a game last year with Kawhi Leonard there. Without Kawhi Leonard there, maybe they could get another game potentially. Who knows? And having most of their roster or just about all their roster helps as well.
Yeah. So, Ross, I'm going to give you the Steve Clifford hat here for Orlando.
Okay.
If I'm Steve Clifford, what is your goal going into the bubble? What is your goal for these 8 games and beyond for
Okay,
Orlando?
I think the first thing you got to do is you got to make sure you make the playoffs. I know it's almost a guarantee with how much of a gap there is between them and Washington, but
Right.
you need to make the playoffs. You will never hear the end of it if the Beal and Bertans-less Washington Wizards beat you to the playoffs. If you think about it, you have the home field advantage. You don't have to go as far. You don't have to travel as far. Although you're going to be in a bubble, and I guess everyone's still secluded, you might feel just a little more comfortable, so to say. After that, if you could drive a team like, depending on the seed, Toronto or Milwaukee, if you could drive them to 6 games, even 7, you have to take that as a win. You just have to. And if you get a young player like a Fultz or a Bamba to play well, you have to take that as a massive win because you're already looking towards the next season. This season is the most strangest season we've ever seen in almost any sports history in any league.
Mm-hmm.
If you get Bamba to have a good series or a Fultz to have a good series, those are your young pieces for the future. Or even a Gordon to maybe make that next step we've all been waiting for. If you get that, you just have to say, all right, look, this season was different than anything else. But look at this guy. He had this series against an elite talent like a Giannis or a team like Toronto. That's all you could ask for. I don't think he's predicting a first-round win deep down in his heart. But a young player developing, make the playoffs, you're good to go.
Yeah. And so, Chris, if you are a Magic fan, I know you're a Heat fan, but I'm going to ask you to be a Magic fan. What would you consider as a successful second season in the bubble?
I would consider it for the Magic. I would consider winning, obviously making the playoffs, and I think winning multiple games.
Mm-hmm.
If like, because I feel like in a bubble, I feel like anything can happen. Everyone's had the layoff. Anything can happen. Because you can get off to a great start, and someone else can maybe get off to a sluggish start, and that could go into anything can happen. So
yeah, something I wanted to bring up: the fact that all of these playoff series are going to be very different. Obviously, with all 7 games taking place in the same area and no home court advantage necessarily in terms of your packed arena filled with your fans. So, Ross, do you think that could mean that we see series end quicker? That we could see like 4-game series, like the psychology of, we're 2-0 up at home, or we're 2-0 and we got to go play on the road, or we're down 0-2, we got to win this game at home. Do you think that psychology is going to just you think that coaches are going to continue to play that psychology with the players, or are they just going to try to say, look, we just got to try to win these games as much as we can?
I think the fact that there's no home court advantage, right? Where a team with lesser skill and lesser talent, they could just push through. I think since that's going to be eliminated, you could see a lot more 4-0 series. At the end of the day, this is just bona fide pickup basketball. The best team is always going to win in most cases just because a lot of the outside variables that can contribute to a team's loss are restricted. You're in a bubble. You have nothing else to do. You are there to play basketball. There's no home court advantage. There's no having to go on the road. There's no dinners before. There's no poisoning of a pizza before a game. There's nothing like that. You have one job to play basketball. So the best team is more than likely going to win. So there could be a lot more sweeps. These 1-8 series, 2-7 series, you're going to see a big difference in the talent level because all the outside factors are just gone. They're just gone.
And that could hurt a team like Orlando. I mean, granted, Orlando, their win last year was on the road. So
anything's possible.
Yeah. So I mean, what is y'all's prediction? What is y'all's prediction for what Orlando is going to do in the bubble? Like, what seed are they going to get, and who are they going to lose to in the playoffs, or are they going to win it all?
I got them. They'll probably jump to the 7th. More than likely play the Raptors. I think another,
Do you
rematch of
think
last
lose in the
year.
first round?
I think they lose in the first round in 5.
Okay. So same as last year.
Yeah.
Uh, Chris, do you agree with Ross? You got some other opinion? What do you got?
I agree with that. I almost pulled the trigger on 6, but I think I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stick. I'm gonna go with Ross with 5 because I just think I just don't think they are talented enough to win multiple games, and they don't have that like energy to feed off of.
Mhm.
I felt like if
Yeah.
maybe if they had energy, they could maybe have won 2.
hmm I think that. Well, here's the deal. So they play Toronto on August 5th. It's their fourth game in the bubble. So it'll be if that appears to be the likeliest opponent for them, just given where they are in the standings and where Toronto is in the standings. So I'm going to that game's going to be very interesting and could be almost their playoff preview, if you will. So keep an eye for that game. That's probably their most exciting game in the bubble. But honestly, I actually think I look. Toronto was better last year, but their record at this point in the season is the exact same as it was the year before. They're not as talented as they were the year before, though. However, I think that teams are going to look at Toronto and they're going to say, "Oh, they don't have Kawhi. They're not as good as last year," and that should not be questioned because Toronto might have better. There might be better competition against Toronto this year, but I still think Toronto is just as good. They're just as capable of winning this year as they were last year, in my opinion. At least getting out of the East. And the thing with the West is such a gauntlet, and they're gonna just beat up on each other. And honestly, whoever gets out of the West, you can't assume that they're gonna beat a team in the East. So I think it's such a toss up this year. So, but we'll get to the top of the East in a little bit, and we'll get to the West on the next episode of the podcast. So let's move on now to Brooklyn. Brooklyn's not going to take too much time, I imagine.
No.
But Brooklyn here, we all know that they are not putting their best foot forward in the bubble. Kevin Durant's likely healthy, but he's not coming to play in Orlando. Kyrie Irving is not playing in Orlando. So that's without their two best players. And Spencer Dinwiddie's not playing either. I believe Torian Prince is out. DeAndre Jordan, I don't believe, is playing. So that's 5 of arguably their 6 or 7 best players not playing with the team. I think they had to sign the most outside free agents with 4. They had to sign 4 outside guys to play, and considering they're only a half game back of the 8th spot. I mean, what is Brooklyn doing here, Ross? I'm being honest. What are they doing here?
I don't think it was up to the Brooklyn management. I just think they didn't want to play. I just don't. I don't know if there's any crazy explanation. I just think it's Kyrieing, not playing. Durant doesn't want to take a risk, I guess, and Dinwiddie is kind of Kyrie-esque in his movements. He's definitely not a standard get in line NBA player. There's nothing more to it than that. The Nets are going to be. I'm excited to watch Jamal Crawford and Michael Beasley. They are going to basically make the AC by default because Washington probably get swept. That's about it. There's nothing else for the Nets. I wished Kyrie and KD pulled through. I wanted that so bad because that would have changed the whole landscape of not only the East but the whole entire NBA.
Yeah.
That's now your almost lead contender. If there's any chemistry there, if they get any chemistry together between those two superstars, you could see a big shift. But that didn't happen. So we got Jamal Crawford.
Yeah.
Excited
They
to see
could have made something happen in the bubble if they really wanted to commit, but they chose not to. However, we're talking about Brooklyn. We're kind of writing them off, but they have probably the most favorable schedule in the bubble. So 5 of their 8 games come against teams that are under 500 right now. So they have 2 games against Orlando that we previously mentioned. They also get Washington in game 2 of their schedule. And they also get Sacramento and Portland. So that's 5 winnable games, I would say. I mean, Portland is their last game, and Portland could be playing for a spot to stay in that top 9 to play in the play-in game. But I think that the East is. I think that the Nets. We're talking about them, easily moving into 8th. But Chris, do you agree with that? Because I'm looking at the schedule and I don't necessarily know if I agree with that.
I mean, they could stay at 7, but I'm going off of you signed two players that haven't played in the NBA, haven't really just played in the NBA. I mean, Jamal Crawford's 40, haven't played in the NBA in a while. Though his last game was a 50-plus game.
Yeah, exactly, and he's going to get that opportunity.
I mean, I could see it, but I'm going to go off of the team that's more fully loaded with their normal roster. I'm going to go with that because I do see a lot of great offense. I don't see defense at all. That's something Orlando is better at. That's
true. And yeah, those 2 games are very important in terms of figuring out 7 versus 8 in that conference. I think that the biggest thing, we talked a little bit about it before we came on the podcast, but Caris LeVert's probably the most exciting player that's going to be playing for the Nets in Orlando. He's probably the most talented guy that they have on that roster. They have a bunch of young guys that are also going to get a lot of minutes. Kuric probably will get a lot of minutes. Zanan Musa might get some playing time. I would expect Jamal Crawford also to get some run. Jared Allen will be able to play consistent minutes at the 5 with DeAndre Jordan not there. So it'll give these guys a chance because it'll be interesting because next year when the team looks very different with Kyrie, Kevin Durant, Dinwiddie, so it's basically a lot of these guys that are going to be in their second unit next year are going to get the opportunity to get some run here in Orlando. And how do you think that will help them when it comes to next season? Ross, what do you think?
As far as the for
giving these
question,
giving these supposed second unit guys some run here for a team that is projected to be a top contender for next season and beyond.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see a little more Jared Allen, a little more Caris LeVert. Hopefully they can gain more confidence because next year it could be an opposite effect, actually, now that I think about it, because in this bubble, you're going to get a lot more touches. Your 2 guys that are going to dominate at least 80% of the ball next year are not going to be there. So you might have that complex where you're like, I could do without them, especially if they have somewhat of a good run. By that, I mean they do well, they get to the 7th seed and maybe make a strong case or 8th seed and make a strong case against the Bucks or the Raptors. And you can look at that and say, well, why do we need KD and Kyrie? Mm-hmm. Why do we need all these guys to touch the ball? I'm Caris LeVert. I think Caris LeVert on a good team could average over 20 points a game. Yeah. I think Jared Allen is a starting center, and I mean, and he could be a really good piece, and he's just not going to touch the ball. I don't know if that's an issue for him because it seems like he's fine getting the rebounds and doing putbacks, but you're gonna get a feeling, and especially if you're Jamal Crawford, this might just be an 8-game audition for a team next year. Mm-hmm. You probably don't plan on staying on the Nets. You plan on showing that, hey, I can still ball, and hopefully someone takes a chance on me. Same thing with a Beasley. I just think they got to go out there and do the best they can, and let the chips fall where they may. If they come back next year, hopefully they don't get the issue of I want to touch the ball more, because at the end of the day, KD, Kyrie, and Dinwiddie deserve to touch the ball. They've gained that right.
That's the thing too, is because they have so many guys that aren't choosing to play, they signed a bunch of guys off the street that needed an NBA home, and they are practically fighting for their NBA lives at this point, considering the fact that they weren't on a team in past the first buyout market. Chris, we talked a little bit about this before the podcast. You have guys like Jamal Crawford, Michael Beasley on basically outside looking in, the fringe of the NBA, that if this unique circumstance hadn't happened, they wouldn't be on a roster right now. Tyler Johnson's included in that, Justin Anderson. So do you think that could have like an adverse effect here? And maybe we'll see a better version of the Nets than we expect.
I mean, I think you could see that because like players like Justin Anderson, Tyler Johnson were getting minutes not too long ago at like maybe last year. They were getting minutes playing. So, and Jamal Crawford obviously didn't play at all this year, but he always stays ready. And it does, I think what does hurt Michael Beasley, he is suspended 5 games. So,
Yeah.
so he's going to miss the first 5 games of the bubble. So that could hurt him. Because he's only going to play in the last 3 of the play-in, and then he'll obviously, depending on what happens, maybe get to play in the play-in games or maybe already be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that could hurt him. But again, like those are some players that at one point were in rotations at some point in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be. So you do have some experience. It's not like you have no experience at all. They're experienced players, so we'll see though.
Last question before we move on: what will be Jamal Crawford's game high in the bubble?
34.
34. I'll take it. I'll go 40. I'll go his age 40. He'll drop 40 in the game. Probably against a team like Phoenix that doesn't care about probably against a team that's not very good at defense.
I'm gonna go 38.
Yeah, I'll say this: he'll drop. Portland, they don't play defense. Yeah. All right, so let's move on now to Indiana. I know Indiana currently sits number 5. We're jumping number 6 in Philly, but I want to save Philly for a little bit later. But Indiana is entering this bubble. Victor Oladipo is not playing as their headliner, but also keep in mind Victor Oladipo did not play a whole lot during the season. In fact, I'm looking at the list right now. He was never the leading scorer in a game this season for the team. They're also without Jeremy Lamb, which also is probably just as much of a loss, considering the fact that Jeremy Lamb was a big part of how this team got to 39-26 before the suspension of the season. So at this point right now, it's Domantas Sabonis' team. But Ross, what is your outlook for what the Pacers can do in the bubble?
Well, a couple things. One, Oladipo is not officially ruled out. He is practicing in the bubble with the team. As of yesterday, there's a growing belief that he will play. But let's say he doesn't, right? Let's just say he doesn't. There's still a highly efficient team with a great coach and a bunch of great young players. Malcolm Brogdon always seems to be one of the most efficient players in the league. A 90-50-50 guy, 90-50-40 guy. It seems like always around there.
Mm-hmm.
You just have a really good team with a lot of young pieces that has a lot of desire to win and a great head coach. So if you get a favorable matchup, depending on who it is, I could see them winning a first-round series. I think they are a really good team with a lot of really good players. I love TJ Warren, one of the most underappreciated scorers in this league. It just seems like no one ever seems to mention him. What is he? He's almost averaging probably a little over 20 this year, I think. A great three-point shooter. Yeah, he's an overall amazing player. But now let's say Oladipo pulls through. Now we got a real fun situation. Let's say Oladipo pulls through, and just say the first 8 games are his practice games, right? The bubble games that make your playoff season. They're gonna make the playoffs. It's a guarantee actually at this point because they
have qualified for the playoffs already.
They're 8 games. Oladipo warms up. Let's say in the 8th game he drops a quick 30 piece. This is my prediction. I was right about J.R. Smith, so at this point I have a lot of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
He drops 30 points in game 8. Looks good. They're at the 5 seed. I'm scared if I'm a Heat fan, which I am a Heat fan.
Mm-hmm.
Because you probably didn't plan on this the whole year, right? You didn't plan on seeing Oladipo at all in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. You now have, let's say if Oladipo wasn't playing, you put Butler on Warren, that's a lockdown. You're done. It's over. You're not scoring. Butler is disgusting. Now you got to take him off Oladipo. Now you have Warren who's able to get his shots up. Mm-hmm. And the Heat, we're going to have to deal with the Sabonis. You got to take Bam Adebayo. I love the fact that Bam Adebayo is very mobile, but it's going to be difficult for him not to stay in the paint with Sabonis, who has a little more range.
Right.
It's going to be a difficult matchup for the Heat. So if Oladipo is able to play, they stay at the 5th and have to play Heat at the 4th. This is a very interesting series because as much as I love the Heat, I could see the Pacers winning. And at that point, they play the Bucks. Another great matchup. A lot of bigs on the Pacers that are very highly talented. You still have Miles Turner, who is still a really solid player. It's going to make a difficult time for Giannis driving in the paint. This is very interesting if Oladipo plays, but that's what we have to wait to see. If he doesn't play, once again, young players get a good shot. I think they could drive the Heat to 6 games, but I think the Heat win it. But I am very intrigued to see Oladipo play.
Indiana's schedule starts off very lax. They get three games against under 500 teams in the first half with Washington, Orlando, and Phoenix. In the second half, though, and they also start out against Philly, a team that they are currently tied with in the standings. So that will kind of set the tone for them. And then in the second half, they get the Lakers, they get the Rockets, and they get a pair of games against y'all's Miami Heat. So, Chris, how much as a Heat fan, Ross kind of threw his 2 cents. I want you to throw in your 2 cents. As a Heat fan, how scared are you of the Pacers?
I'm scared of them because if Victor Oladipo is able to play, I consider them. I've thought from the start of the season, if they're fully healthy, this is a team that could make the conference finals if they get the right matchups.
Yeah.
So I am nervous about this team. And they have bad blood, too. It's bad blood between TJ Warren and Jimmy Butler they have bad blood. So this would be a very exciting matchup to see. This could be one of the very few 7-game series I could see.
So, but I mean, let's talk about this first. Let's say Oladipo. So, what is the difference here? And this is a question for the both of you. Let's assume. So, what is the Pacers' ceiling with Oladipo versus without Oladipo? How much of a difference does Victor Oladipo make for this team?
I think their ceiling with him is Eastern Conference Finals, possibly pushing a team to a Game 6 or a Game 7. I don't think they're able to beat the Bucks or the Raptors if they get that far. I just don't. Without, I think best case scenario is you could surprise the Heat in the first round because they're still a very good team without him. Mm-hmm. Don't get it twisted. I think their ceiling, if without him, is just beat the Heat and probably lose in the second round. It's a big difference. He's an all-star player. He's an amazing talent, and that team just seems to gel well with him when he played last year. Although he hasn't had the reps that he has, and that could be a big issue. But if he's able to click with this team, it's going to be a difficult time.
Chris, how much of a difference does Oladipo make for this team?
It's about a round difference. I think with him, I think you could get to the conference finals, but easily could get to the semifinals. Maybe win 2 games, and then 2 or 3, and then without him, it's still possible to win in the first round. But I would say probably a first round exit without him.
Mm-hmm. As much as I hate to say it, I like Indiana too. I just think that their playoff inexperience is going to hurt them. I know they have Malcolm Brogdon, but that's really all that they have in terms of playoff experience. Oladipo hasn't been past the first round. Neither has Miles Turner hasn't. TJ Warren has no experience in the playoffs. Sabonis has the same experience that Oladipo does. They don't, and I think that will matter here. I think that teams that have the veteran leadership, the veteran opportunities, and yes, this whole experience of playing bubble basketball is different than any other, but also the ability to adapt and the ability to learn how to turn on the playoff switch. That is going to be very important. And I think that Indiana, home court wise, is strong. So at home they're 21-11. On the road they were 18-15. So that home court advantage was a big part as to why they got to where they were. And I'm afraid that not having that is going to I think if they had a home court advantage, they would have an easier opportunity to beat a team like a Boston or a Philly or a Miami. I think though that with the teams that are ahead of them or tied with them, they are sixth. I think that the 5 teams that are at their position or higher are better than them record wise and talent wise as a whole. So for me, I think Indiana is a first round exit yet again. It's unfortunate to say that, but that would be the 3rd straight year making the playoffs and losing out in the first round. I just don't see much of another alternative.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you? I mean, this is we're talking about like 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be the 5th year that the Pacers would make the playoffs and exit in the first round. So, tough life as a Pacers fan. But let's move on now. Let's move on to the top 5 because the top 5 here I feel like is a lot more important. I feel like we have 5 teams here, in my opinion, that there are arguments to where they can make it all the way. Let's start with Philly. The one thing that helps Philly is really the most top with Simmons, with Embiid, with Tobias Harris, Al Horford, guys that have played decent amounts of playoff basketball recently. They're a good mesh of young talent and veteran experience. I think that their downfall, though, is the fact that they won't be able to play at home because we talked about how Indiana is really good at home, but look at Philly here. So this is a big difference, and I think this is a stat a lot of people are overlooking. Philly at home, 29-2 in Philadelphia. On the road, outside of Philadelphia, 10-24. That is a big difference, guys. They won't be playing any games in Philadelphia anytime soon. So, is that a stat that people should be looking out for? What do you think, Ross?
100%. 100% a stat you should be looking out for. When you're that dominant at home, that's not a coincidence. That doesn't just happen. You don't just accidentally slip into 29-2 at home. Mm-hmm. You've completely lost that. I don't care what the court looks like. I don't care if the court has all the 76ers logos. It's not the same. There's no crowd chanting your name. Mm-hmm. There's no environment. And it seems like Philly, there's just certain games they just don't show up. Mm-hmm. So they have all the talent in the world. They have every reason to be the best team in the East. They have every reason to be a championship contender. But for some reason, there's just games, they just take off. Embiid always seems to be a little out of shape. Hopefully, he got better over in quarantine, but there's a chance he got worse. Simmons, there's just certain games where he's completely taken out of it because he cannot shoot a basketball.
Yeah.
And they just have games, it just doesn't look like they want to win. It just doesn't. And I think that was an issue when they had Butler, and I think Butler said it in few words that was an issue. They don't have the dog in them. They don't have the championship mentality in them. And I think when you're at home, that kind of just automatically comes out of you because when people are chanting your names and your fans are watching you, you seem to just show up. So now that you've lost that, what are you guys going to be? A bunch of really talented players that just do nothing? No. Mm-hmm. It's starting to become a thing for Philly where it's always, they have so much talent. This is the year. Well, how many times is it going to be this is the year before it's the year? If they have a horrible performance in the bubble, it's almost time to pick, is this an Embiid team or a Simmons team? Because it seems like they don't gel well together in certain games, and they want to do their own things. Embiid just wants the ball in the paint while Simmons wants to run up and down the floor. At some point, they might need to pick one of those two guys. And if a poor performance in the bubble doesn't make them pick, I don't know what will.
Yeah. So, that's a bold statement you just made, Ross. If this is the opportunity, if this is the deciding factor into deciding between Simmons and Embiid,
they might have to decide eventually. They will.
Yeah, and that could very well become a case. Is this Embiid or is this Simmons team? Who is the best player on the Sixers team?
Embiid.
Okay, So you think that Embiid is the direction that they should go in if they need to ever break this team up?
Yeah, he's just a superior talent, but he also has a play style that's a little old-fashioned. He is a pretty mobile big man, but if Simmons could learn how to shoot, he would be the direction of this team because he is the perfect build for the current NBA. But he couldn't hit a 18-footer to save his life, so there's that.
Here's a question. Would you trade Joel Embiid for Klay Thompson right now?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's a really
I
hard
feel like
question.
Klay Thompson would work really well next to Ben Simmons. He's a
It's tough.
shooter. He could take that. He could take that off of Simmons' shoulders. If they double Simmons, Klay will likely be the one that's open in the corner or in his spot. I think that could be I think that could be actually a pretty decent idea.
If you take age out of it, right? Because Embiid is the younger player.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a better fit for the team. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
He was only what 3 drafts before after. He was only in 3 drafts after Klay Thompson.
Yeah, but Embiid basically took 2 years off, so that's a little less
Sure.
taxing on the NBA body, which is a good and bad thing because he's obviously very injury prone. And Klay Thompson is coming off an injury, but let's just say healthy, same age, play style. The Klay Thompson play style obviously works better with Ben Simmons. It's like LeBron James. He needs a bunch of shooters. Ben Simmons is very LeBron James-esque in his vision. He just is not LeBron James-esque in his winning or his shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ooh. I don't know.
Chris, I mean, obviously that's not going to happen, but
Yeah.
I was just bringing that up just to kind of see where y'all are going. But let's take a look at what does Philly need to do to be successful in the bubble? Because I think there are 4 teams here that out of these 5 teams, I think there are 4 teams that have a legit chance to make it to the finals, and I think Philly is one of those 4 teams because of their sheer talent. And their schedule going into and I think a lot of that will have to do with who they match up with in the first round, because the issue with Philly is the fact that because there's the East is very deep in terms of this top group, they're going to play a team that could knock them out in the first round, and it will come down to matchups. So, but in this schedule they have a very favorable schedule. San Antonio, Washington, Orlando, Portland, Phoenix, all teams that are under 500 at this point. So that's more than half their games are against teams that are under 500. So where do you see Philly ending up in the seeds, and how far do you think they can go in the playoffs given their current given what their seed will be?
I think they do end up as 5 because it's just too much uncertainty with Indiana. So I think they'll end up as 5, and I think they're gonna play Miami in the first round.
And how would you feel about a series with Miami and Philly?
It would be
series.
It would be maybe one of the more fun series because of obviously Jimmy Butler was just on the Sixers not even a year ago.
Richardson.
And Richardson too.
Yeah.
So it's like it would be a fun series, but my concern about them is they don't have depth.
Yeah.
They don't have any depth. If after that starting 5 with Simmons, Richardson, Horford, Embiid, and Harris, it's very, very inexperienced and not really as good as teams.
How important is depth in this situation? Because these teams have had in a way have had 4 months off, a full off season almost, nearly a full off season between the last time they played actual NBA basketball and now. So they're going to have a lot more energy in a playoff series than they normally would. So Ross, this is not necessarily a question just for Philly, but for the league in itself. How important is depth, and is it as important? Is it because I think there's an argument to where it could be even more important now because you never know with how many COVID cases that could pop up or injuries that could pop up because players haven't been playing in so long. But how important is depth here? Is it more important than before? Is it less important, or is it the same?
I think it's more important. This is the most unpredictable season we've ever had. We don't know what's gonna happen next.
That's
There could
true.
be a lot. There could be one case on your team could destroy your team.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And like you said, a lot of these guys haven't touched a basketball in months because they don't have a hoop.
Yeah.
This could lead to injury. Their bodies might have. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but going months without playing and hopping back in, I could tell you as someone that played basketball 2 days ago after not playing for maybe 2-3 months, I am in pain. I'm also not an NBA player, but I am in pain. There's going to be a big difference, and having a team like Miami that is a very, very deep team with a very, very good coach that could rotate a lot of different players, it's going to be a big challenge for Philly. Philly is a 7-person deep team. Their rotation is only 7-8 players max. And that could hurt them a lot. One case could destroy a team. One injury could destroy the team. And it's a very injury-prone team with Embiid. You don't know if Embiid is ready or in any good basketball shape to play.
Mhm.
It's going to be very difficult for a lot of teams in this league to deal with these injuries because I think they will pop up. I just think some of these guys haven't taken care of their bodies like they should have been over quarantine because maybe they didn't even think that the season wasn't going to happen for most of it.
Mm-hmm.
For probably the first half of it, they were like, "Oh, there's no way they're going to come back. Like, what's happening in the world?" And you might have just let your body just go away and think, I'll catch up in the summer. I'll catch up in the fall. We probably won't be back till Christmas. That's going to be a big, big thing we have to look forward to and look at for
Yeah.
the bubble.
Who is the most important player on this team? Straight up.
Embiid.
Yeah,
Embiid?
yeah, it's definitely Embiid because if he is in great shape and he plays hard,
Oh,
they are
it's going to
completely
be very
different.
difficult. Miami would have a very difficult time. Bam's going to have the toughest challenge he's had in his whole career, trying to guard a Embiid that's trying and Embiid that's in shape. If he's not in shape, I think Bam's going to run him around the court. I think Bam stays in elite shape. I think he's a better pure athlete, if that makes sense. I think
Mhm.
it's going to be very difficult if Embiid's not in shape to keep up with him Adebayo. I just think it is. But if he's committed, I'm going to be a very worried Heat fan. The Heat are in a very
Yep.
dangerous position at this 4 seed. We're going to really jumping to the 4 seed should be the Heat's biggest priority right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think because they're 2.5 out of 3 right now from
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Boston. So that's
And
it's
we much
doable.
rather play the Pacers.
Yeah, it's doable, and you would avoid Milwaukee in
Yeah.
in the second round if you get out of it. So, and
I
Miami's 2-0 against Toronto.
100%.
So I can see where this conversation is going. So let's officially transition into the Miami Heat portion
Yes.
of the podcast.
Yes. What do we got, an hour? What do we got?
I know you two know a lot more about the Miami Heat than I do. So you guys take it away wherever you guys want to start.
I mean,
I'll let you start, Chris.
I think with this team, I think they're one of the more mentally prepared teams in the East. If I want to say that. I think if there is a concern about bubble, people just being too crazy that they can't do anything, Miami is a team that can focus and stay mentally ready because you have a guy like Jimmy Butler that literally will dog you. He will literally get all up in you if you're not prepared. So I think that is a key thing in a bubble. And also, it's underrated. My getting Iguodala and Jay Crowder just became a lot like just better because they have playoff experience. Obviously, Iguodala has been to a bunch of NBA finals, so and he can defend. So getting those two was huge because you literally got him for nothing. So that's just 2 extra players in your rotation, and I just think I think they could surprise a second round team if they get the right matchup. In my opinion.
100%. I think the Heat are going to be more than prepared. I think, like you said, Jimmy Butler has probably called every single guy on the team every single day to make sure that they're on top of their stuff. This team is not going to be caught lacking. I promise you that. And they are one of the deepest teams in this league. If we are able to manage to get to the 3rd seed, if we get a first round Pacers, second round Toronto, I think we beat both those teams. And I think we make a statement against at least one of those. I think we could easily beat both those teams. By that, I mean 6 games. I don't think either of them go to 7. Now, I am also highly biased. and I will admit that. And I could just be
Yep.
saying things because I love this team. And I really love this team, not just because they're the Miami Heat, but this specific roster is built in a way that you just have to love them. You can't watch Jimmy Butler play and Tyler Hero play and Duncan Robinson play and Bam Adebayo play and not have a smile on your face. As an NBA fan,
Yep.
you can't. This team is ready. And I think the league's in for a real big surprise. I think we're going to get to the conference finals. Even if we get to the third seed, I think I'd give us almost a lock. I think we beat the Raptors. I really do. I think we're 2-0 in them against the season, and I think the Pacers, whether or not they have Oladipo, we could beat. As much as I said I was worried about them earlier, I think the Heat got it. If we have to face Philly, that's where I'd get quote unquote worried. Because if Embiid is trying and that team's clicking, they are probably the second best team in the East.
I agree
still
with that.
think Milwaukee is. When we play Milwaukee in the East Conference Finals, let's say we get to the Conference Finals, I think it's almost guaranteed we see Milwaukee at the end. I think Spoelstra has a game plan. I don't know what it is, but you could stop. Giannis is, as much as he is unstoppable, he still can't shoot that basketball.
Mhm.
That is still up. I don't care what anyone says if he just bangs it in the paint. Well, we'll put Butler on you. And then we're going to have Adebayo. I think exactly 100% Iguodala. We're going to make Giannis's life a living hell. I just think it's a matter of time.
And you also need to look, if you look at statistically, Bam Adebayo was one of the best defenders on Giannis this season. If you look at the stats,
he can move and he gives them a length issue. It's
just Giannis was bothered, and especially in the last meeting. In their last meeting, Giannis could not do anything in the paint. He was not obviously he struggled shooting at times, but he could not do anything in the paint. Like he was struggling.
Spoelstra has a game plan. I think what his game plan is let the rest of the team beat us.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a Giannis shutdown. Let Middleton win the game. Let Brook Lopez win the game. Let Bledsoe win the game. And if they do, hats off to them. I don't think they can. I think the Heat are going to make the finals this year. I think that's my bold prediction, biased prediction, which I will clearly admit. I think Hero's going to show why. I think Hero's a little pissed off that he's no longer mentioned in this Rookie of the Year run, which I don't blame the NBA for saying. Zion and John Morant, I think, are top two, but I think Tyler looks at that and says, you kind of forgot about me.
For the year. Hold up. Tyler Hero was never considered for Rookie of the Year.
For the first 3 weeks of the season, he was.
Okay, yeah. Like a year ago, yeah.
Kendrick, no, 100%. No. That's not what I mean. I think he's looking at that saying the gap between Morant, Williamson, and me is not as high as people think. I think he thinks that, whether that's true or not.
I think he'll end up on the rookie first team with Kendrick Nunn.
100%. I think we have the best rookie class because we got two studs, not just one stud. We got two studs.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hero has a lot to prove, and I think he's going to be one of the best rookies from this class. Yeah, and he is the most confident rookie, in my opinion. Whether that is confidence that is backed by play, I can't say, because he is playing well. But the way he talks and the way he actually thinks he's averaging 30 points a game, and I love it, and I love to see it. What game was it, Chris? Was it against Philly where he pulled up for three? Yeah, it was against Philly because I remember Richardson contested it. We were down 2. He ran down the court, and instead of setting the ball up for, I think we had like 8 seconds left, setting up for maybe a pick and roll, give it to Butler, he stepped back around the 3-point line. Richardson didn't even look like he knew it was coming. Bang, drained it. I think we won that game in overtime because I believe. But whatever. Either way, we won the game in overtime.
It's just I just love it. And actually, he was one of the more clutch players. If you look at shots like within like a certain amount of within like one score with like under 10 20 seconds, he was one of the more clutch players in the league, actually.
And
I think a lot of clutch shots.
Yeah, I think a player like Butler is built for the bubble. I don't think the NBA will mic him up, but I would love to hear what he's saying on that court. I would pay any amount of money. I don't know what premium package I have to give to the NBA to get that, but Butler's going to say things that's going to get in people's heads because he is a pest, and I love that he's on our team. I think getting Butler is the biggest move since getting LeBron for the Miami Heat.
Mm-hmm. It was.
I think I love Jimmy Butler because I'm not gonna lie. Before he came to the Heat, I always thought he was an overrated player. I have to be completely honest. I thought he was a little more talk than he was play. I think he destroyed teams. But I think we learned from something from Butler's. He will play well, and he will give you your all if you're willing to give him your all, which I think Minnesota wasn't, Philly wasn't, and I think this Heat team, I think Heat culture is just too strong. And I know that this is pure Heat love, and I'm sure we get into some of the flaws the Heat team might have, but I am ready for a deep Heat playoff run. And I think a finals trip is not out of the question. I just think it's not.
So you think they can make the finals?
100%. Do I think they can win the finals? I don't think so, but I think they can make the finals.
Chris, what do you think?
I think if they get to the 3 seed, I actually think they will. If they get the 3
and play the Pacers.
Yep. If they get the 3 and get Indiana and Toronto in back-to-back series, I think they get to the conference finals, and I think after it'll be a little and after being in a deeper run, I think maybe teams may start to get like bubble fatigue. I don't think Miami will. I think they're built for that, and I think they could win a conference finals series with Milwaukee.
See, I don't think they can. They this is what they have to do. I don't think they can get past both Toronto and Milwaukee. I think both of them are better. That's why I don't see the Heat making it all the way to the NBA Finals. I think there's a chance they could beat one of them. But for instance, if they beat the Raptors, it'll likely be a 7-game series against the Raptors, in my opinion, or at least 6. The Raptors are really good, and I think teams are overlooking them. And the Bucks also. I mean, the thing with the Bucks is they have Giannis, and the Heat have the potential to contain Giannis. However, they have so many other ways they can beat you still. And I think that's an underrated aspect to that Milwaukee team. They have Bledsoe. They have Chris Middleton. That's the thing is how. So if you put Butler on Giannis, do you put Adebayo on Middleton? Because the way I see it is Adebayo would be guarding Giannis most of the time, and Butler would get Middleton as his assignment. But also then there's then there's Bledsoe, then there's DiVincenzo, then there's Brook Lopez. How are you gonna you're gonna have to play Kelly Olynyk a lot if you're gonna have a guy like that. You're gonna need to play Kelly Olynyk a lot. The thing is they're gonna have to play big, and Miami has the pieces to play big, but they'd much rather play Adebayo at the 5, and and they won't be able to play Adebayo at the 5 if they play Milwaukee. So that to me is why Miami will struggle in a series against Milwaukee. They have the pieces to do it. They do, especially also with Iguodala. And Iguodala, I could see getting a lot of run in a series against Milwaukee. But I don't know. I think I still find it hard to believe that Miami can beat Milwaukee in a series. Toronto as well. I think both series will be challenging. I think they can compete against them. I just don't know if they can win 4 games against either of them. So let's move forward here. Let's move forward. After Miami, let's talk Boston. So Boston is currently, I believe, number 4. Yeah, they're number 3 right now. So they get to start out against Milwaukee on Friday, July 31st. So that should be an interesting start to their bubble experience. They have Portland, Miami, Brooklyn, Toronto, Orlando, Memphis, and Washington. So they'll get a game against Milwaukee and they'll get a game against Toronto before the bubble and before they go into the playoffs, which is convenient for them. But Boston has been kind of an anomaly the past couple of years. This is the first year where they're completely without Kyrie, no question about it. But last year they went out in kind of lame fashion in a 5-game loss. Then 2018 they were 1 win away from going to the finals. So this team, the pieces that are there have a lot of playoff experience. They've won a playoff series in each of the past, I believe, 3. They've won a playoff series in each of the past 4 seasons,
and they went to 2 straight conference finals too.
2 straight conference finals. Yeah, so they've won a playoff series in each of the past 3 seasons. Every year that Tatum's been there, they've been at least to the second round. Where does Boston fit in this whole equation? Ross, we'll start with you.
Boston is a really good team, right? I don't know if they've kind of lost the sexiness of the team by losing Kyrie, but they're a very solid team with a lot of depth. They have a lot of great young players. I think in the NBA pre-show I had a lot of choice words for Tatum and Brown as a duo, and I thought that they wouldn't be able to pull it off. I was wrong. I'm never afraid to admit that I'm wrong in any circumstance. This team is going to be fun to watch because I think they have one of the most elite coaches in the league, which I think the bubble you'll see a lot more coaching because a lot of the outside sources, once again, are out of the equation. It's you, your team, your coach. That's it. No crowd, no nothing.
Because, I mean, the coaches have had 4 months to prepare for this.
Oh, they're ready. And I hope, and I think as UCF alumnites and a current student myself, if we get a little taco fall, I will lose. But I think he is a great piece. All UCF bias aside, I think having him in Orlando, I think he's very comfortable. I think he's had a lot of time to train. I'm sure he's gotten as many reps as he can while facility has been open. But the Brown Tatum duo is not one to be messed with. And you still have Gordon Hayward. People seem to forget that Gordon Hayward is still a bucket.
And Kemba.
And as much as Enes Kanter might be the worst defensive center of all time, he's still a great rebounder and a great scorer.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Smart, another dog. You have a lot of dogs on the team that want to win.
Yeah.
They just seem like a team that is going to give any team trouble, but for some reason, I don't know if Chris feels the same way. I just can't wrap my head around them making a run at a finals appearance. I just can't see it. I don't know why. I just don't think they have the talent, or that I don't have maybe the experience. I think Tatum and Brown maybe need one more year for Tatum to officially be the takeover guy on this team, because I think that's where it's going. I think Kemba understands that this is going to be Tatum's team very soon, if it's not already. But I think they need a little more time to develop, and I think next year we'll see a much better Boston team.
Chris, Boston, what are their what's holding them back? Because Ross said it, and it's hard to wrap his head around them making a finals run. And to an extent, I agree. But what do you think is what's stopping them? I have an opinion on this, but I want to hear yours first.
I think what's stopping them, it's tough because I think that obviously what was stopping them last year was because I think they had too many people that wanted the ball. But now with Kemba does like to shoot, but he is more willing to give the ball to people. I think what's holding them back, I don't know if they really have that guy that can create, and the guy in a late playoff game will give you what you need late in the playoff game. Because you need to remember, Kemba Walker has only won, I think, 3 playoff games in his career. That's it. He's only won 3 playoff games in his career.
That 1 year with Miami, Charlotte, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not good experience. Even for an all-star guard, he doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. I love Jaylen Brown. I love Jason Tatum. But I think Jaylen Brown occasionally will disappear at times. So it's I just think just being able to produce in bigger playoff games may be a challenge for them, because you didn't have that with Kyrie as much, because Kyrie played in bigger playoff games than Kemba Walker. We will see. We will see if that's the case.
Yeah. Here's what's wrong with Boston. I'll tell you exactly what it is. It has nothing to do with Kemba. The thing is, this isn't Kemba's team. This is Jason Tatum's team. Let's get that right.
Yeah.
This is Jason Tatum's. Jason Tatum is the best player on this team. Kemba is a better fit for this team than Kyrie, because Kemba can play a solid number 2. He's probably one of the better number 2s in the league. Kyrie couldn't play number 2. The reason why they lost last year is exactly why the reason they'll lose this year. They can't play big. And in the West, you can get away with it a little bit. In the East, you cannot. because the teams that run the East play big. The guy, honestly, other than Enes Kanter, that Enes Kanter is the only real big that they play. You know, I mean, Daniel Tice has been their starting center for a majority of the season. He's 6'8". He's 6'8". Like, you know, the Rockets are the small ball team. No, it's actually Boston. Let's get that right. Jason Tatum in a series against Milwaukee would have to guard. It would probably be Jason Tatum guarding Giannis, and Giannis has a major advantage there. That like you won't be able to stop Giannis and that's what happened last year. It's exactly what happened last year. Is Giannis feasted on Boston? They game one they got lucky, and after that they had no chance. No chance. They're deep. That will help them. So is Milwaukee. So is Toronto. That doesn't make them special in the East. They just match up really poorly against Milwaukee. And that is why I can't see them getting past Milwaukee. Now, if they can find a way to avoid Milwaukee, maybe wink, wink, maybe Miami could upset Milwaukee in the second round if that were to ever happen, and Boston plays Miami. I like Boston's chances against Miami. I think Boston against Toronto would also struggle against a guy like Siakam. I don't know how they would be able to contain Siakam. So that to me is what is holding Boston back, is they don't have the personnel to defeat a big. And that's why you say, Ross, Taco Fall would make a lot of sense because Taco Fall could protect the rim. But Taco Fall also is incredibly slow. Not like these guys like Giannis and not like Siakam or any of those guys. That's what Taco Fall's biggest hurdle is just simply his speed. And granted, bless his heart, he's 7'6", but it's not easy for him to get up and down the court as fast as these guys like the Embiids and Siakam, and that's what's holding Boston back. Is they're hoping that Tatum can kind of morph himself into a guy like that, but at this point he's not that guy, so you can't expect him to become that guy in the bubble. So look, Tatum is 210 pounds. He's not what he needs to do is he needs to bulk up, and he needs to, and in order for him to compete against the Giannis's and the in order to compete against Siakam, those guys, guard them in a series. So to me, that's what holds Boston back. It has nothing to do with their talent. They're talented enough to make the finals. They're talented enough to contend with all of these teams. But matchup-wise, they don't match up well with the teams that are ahead of them, and that's what's going to hold them back. I think that if an injury pops up, like say if Siakam's not playing against a series with the Raptors, a potential 2-3 series, I think that would open up the game a lot for Boston, and they could make it past Toronto. And same thing with Milwaukee, although with Milwaukee it's a little bit more difficult because I think that they are bigger and they just simply have the size to beat the Celtics. That's why, the way that the series was last year, it made it seem like Milwaukee was that much better than Boston, which that wasn't the case. It was just the fact that Milwaukee was just better matchup-wise. That's why Milwaukee owned that series, because they had the matchups. And this year, there hasn't been enough change for there to be a difference. So that's what's going to hold Boston back. It has nothing to do with anything else.
Yeah. They just don't have the size.
So what do you guys think is Boston's? Yeah. What is Boston's ceiling in the bubble? Is it second round?
Let me see. But it really depends a lot on the standings. But I think second round's very safe to say.
Realistically, I think they're a second round exit. I think they can get past Philly. That's also the thing, is they can get past Philly because Philly is not deep enough, and they have found ways to beat Philly in the past. However, I don't know if they can get past Toronto or Milwaukee without a decent injury. I think if they can get past if they can get lucky, and if the stars align for them in the right ways, they can make it to the finals. And they can even contend in the finals. they have the talent to do it. They have probably one of the best starting lineups in the NBA. Jaylen Brown could be an all-star someday. Jason Tatum will be an all-star someday. Kemba Walker's an all-star. Gordon Hayward's an all-star. That's 4 all-stars in your starting lineup, basically. They have one of the best starting fives in the league. They have a good bench. It's just, to me, I think they will be a second-round exit. However, if things work in the right way for them, could be a finals team. We'll see. But let's move now to Toronto. Toronto's a team I'm very high on. As we mentioned before, Toronto is at the same record at this point during last year's season than they were for this year. I think 46-18, and that's 6.5 games back of the first seed. So it's gonna be difficult for them to get to that number 1 seed. But Ross, in a bubble where home court advantage doesn't count, that doesn't really matter to Toronto.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really surprised by this Raptors team this whole season. I think in the preseason thing, another thing I was completely wrong about is I thought it was going to be a fall-apart season. I didn't think Siakam had the skill to continue his rate of success and continue building this team up. I was wrong about that again, which I'll admit. But this team is very good and has championship DNA after last year, which is always a key.
Yeah. So let's keep the reason why they are where they are right now is because in mid-January, up until almost the All-Star break, they had a 14-game win streak. And then after that 14-game win streak, they took a loss to Brooklyn. But then they were 6-3 after that. So right now they currently sit 3 games ahead of Boston, which that's an important 2 versus 3 because although there isn't home court advantage to decide that, the difference is you either play a team like Philly or Indiana or a team like Brooklyn or Orlando in the first round. And that will be huge. That's a big difference. And the schedule for Toronto doesn't really help them. They have a tough schedule. Start out with the Lakers. LeBron's first game back is against Toronto. And then they get Miami, and Miami's a team looking to claw their way up the standings. Orlando, Boston, which is probably their most important game, the game number 4. Memphis, a team that's fighting for a playoff spot. Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Denver.
Oh my gosh.
That is the toughest schedule that we've seen thus far.
100%.
So
that is
Chris, obviously that game against Boston is important. What makes this Toronto team a contender? What makes them so scary?
Well, they obviously have the championship experience from last year for all those players because all those players returned.
Yeah.
Siakam took one of the biggest steps I have ever seen from one year to the other. In my modern day of watching, that's one of the biggest steps I've ever seen.
Let's put this in perspective. 2 years ago, in 2017, 2018, he started 5 games and averaged 7 points a game.
Now
it's
he's
insane.
27 points. Now he's at 27.
He was an all-star starter.
To be honest, a top 6 MVP candidate, I think.
Yeah.
Because of where they're at.
Top NBA player right now.
100%.
Yeah.
I think he's improved everywhere. He's a much better free throw shooter. He can shoot the threes better. Get good in the paint. He can shoot mid-range. I mean, he's made his game all around now. He can do about everything at a good level. And
he's at that sweet spot at 6'9", where he can be a 3, a 4, or a 5.
Yep, exactly. And the reason why I think they can be a championship contending team, especially to get to the finals. This team is especially good away from home in the playoffs. Believe it or not, they're a better road playoff team than a home playoff team. And you saw that last year.
They won game 6.
They won every game at Golden State.
Yeah.
I believe they won 2 games at Milwaukee. So, they are just a very good team away from home.
Yeah.
I think that's going to make a good advantage for them.
Ross, I'll come to you with this question. What is going to hold Toronto back?
Ooh, what's going to hold Toronto back? their best player still being so young. Although he does have championship DNA and he did win a championship, he was obviously not the best player on the team last year and didn't have to do things that Kawhi Leonard had to do. The reason he was very successful in last year's playoffs is besides the fact that he's an amazing talent, is a lot of the attention is going to Kawhi Leonard. That's gone. You are the attention. They are stopping you. You are not the second option. You're not the third option. You are the number one guy, because they know if they're able to stop you, they're good to go. Yeah. That's a very different thing. In the playoffs, whether I know the playoffs are going to feel different because it's still a bubble, but this is still playoff basketball. That defensive pressure he's going to face is something he's not used to. And I just think he's just, not that he's not ready for it, I don't think he's going to be able to lead a team to a championship through that. I think we'll have some shining moments because he is an amazing talent, but he's not Kawhi Leonard. I think that's simply the best way you can put it. He's not Kawhi Leonard, and that's enough to hold you back.
I think we're going to learn a lot about Fred VanVleet in this.
I love Federico.
I think we're going to learn a lot about Fred VanVleet in this bubble, and it's going to be a huge legacy point for him, because I think that, there's arguments that it's Kyle Lowry. I think Fred VanVleet is the second most important player on this team. I think next after Siakam, it's Fred VanVleet, and then it's Lowry, and then that's all. That's what's so good about this team, is that, and that's why they're so good for such a long time, is they have so many young guys at the top of their team with VanVleet and with Siakam, but also off the bench. They have a completely new bench this year, guys. They have Terrence Davis, Hollis Jefferson plays a lot. Chris Boucher also is going to play a lot. It's a perfect mix almost. It's a perfect mix of young guys and veterans. So your Serge Ibaka, who came in last year, had some playoff experience, and used that to help Toronto. Same with Marc Gasol. And that they are built so perfectly. And I'm going to be honest, I think Toronto is my favorite to come out of the East. I'm going to say I do. I think, and that might be a bold statement, bold prediction, hot take, whatever you call it. I like Toronto coming out of the East, just because I think where they came from coming into the restart, they were in a really good position. I think that Milwaukee, although they are good, I think that they are not ready yet. I think that they need. I still think that that Toronto has a team that can compete against them. I think they have a shot, because I think the backcourt for Toronto is better than Milwaukee, and that is what's going to. And to be honest, I think next to Boston, after Boston, they have the best backcourt in the league. In the East, excuse me, with Lowry and VanVleet. And their bench is incredibly deep. Norm Powell, you're going to see Terrence Davis play a lot. Ibaka or Gasol, whoever comes off the bench. You might even see games where Siakam plays the 5. I think. I doubt it, but I think that there's a lineup in there that makes it possible for them to do that. Maybe you put like VanVleet, Lowry, like Terrence Davis could, Norm Powell. Maybe you put in, maybe I spoke too soon. Maybe, I don't, Marc Gasol or Ibaka should start each and every game. But that team has such good chemistry as well. Toronto is scary, and I think that teams overlook them a lot, but they shouldn't.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah. But let's move on now to Milwaukee, and let's we can keep Toronto in the conversation by kind of comparing these two teams, because they're easily comparable. But look, Milwaukee at this point, it doesn't really matter what they do in the first 8 games, because the number 1 seed is all but theirs at this point. What is unfortunate in Milwaukee's circumstances is the fact that they are going into this with the best record in the NBA. but it won't matter because home court advantage is zilch in the bubble. So what do we think about? Other than that, though, what do we think about Milwaukee? Ross, we'll start with you.
I mean, there's not much to say about Milwaukee. They're the best team in the league record-wise, and they're almost destined to eventually get to the finals. Last year, it just seems like they were just a little too inexperienced, and they met the mighty hand of Kawhi Leonard. This year, that's no longer an excuse. Kawhi Leonard is out of the East, had another year of experience, and this is their conference to lose. You're the best team in the league, and everyone has eyes on you. Giannis needs to cement that legacy as one of the best players to have ever done this. Obviously, he's very young, and I know there's a lot, but the earlier you get the championship, the quicker that chip is off your shoulder. And he's still highly in his prime. He is an amazing talent, arguably the best player in the NBA. You could easily argue that. Mm-hmm. They need to win. They need to have an impressive showing, at least get to the finals for this season to be somewhat of worth it. Do they have to win it? I think even if they lose the finals, you could still say they're a young team, and Giannis is still developing. He's only 25. But they need to make the finals. There's no other team in the East that should beat them. Not saying that they can't, but they should win every series. They're the best team in the league record-wise, and although losing home court advantage, it does suck, it's not an excuse. Because every team has lost all advantages. Every team has lost all benefits. Every team has changed everything they've had to do because of this, because of the pandemic. It's not an excuse. You have players like Bledsoe, Connaughton, George Hill, Ilyasova, Korver, the Lopez brothers. You have a great team. And obviously, your number 2 guy is Chris Middleton. Mm-hmm. You have no excuse this year. There's no longer Kawhi. You are the team. You are the team. That's it. I think, as much as I love the Heat and I think they have a chance of losing, I think this is the Bucks' conference to win, and I think they do win it. Yeah. I think they do.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what are your thoughts on Milwaukee?
It's pretty like they brought back a lot of people from last year that was close to the finals. Mm-hmm. Now you're in an Eastern Conference that is still good, but I think not as good as it was last year because Kawhi Leonard obviously on the Raptors. So I think that could help them if that indeed ends up being a conference finals, that he's not having to deal with the best defensive player in the league anymore. I mean, that's pretty Giannis not having to. That would help immensely for him. And I just think this has to be the year that they at least get to the finals. I think this is one of the years that they could win because maybe just because no one has an advantage. I mean, maybe you could win it, but definitely this has to be the year they get out. They have to get out of it. If they don't get out of the East this year, there is going to be questions about Giannis. Does he want to stay there? Even though he's said a lot that he wants to, it's a lot of. I think there will be murmurs, maybe like
murmurs.
I feel like there are already murmurs, but those murmurs are going to turn into screams. If there's no ring on his finger at the end. I think the Bucks' biggest competition, honestly, is in the Western Conference. If I'm going to be honest, I think that any team they are capable of beating every team in the East. The West is going to be where their biggest challenge lies, and that depends on who gets out of the West. I think that the Clippers with Kawhi pose a big challenge if the Clippers can get out of the West. Obviously LeBron, if he comes out of the West with AD. That is a team. The thing is, I think those two teams could provide major challenges for the Bucks if they get out of the West and meet them in the finals. If Milwaukee does not get out of the East this year, you're right, Ross. It would be a total disappointment. And you're right, Chris. Though you will hear more than just murmurs if Giannis doesn't win here. And there might be a crowd that says, oh, but it was the bubble. If it wasn't the bubble, they would have won the championship. I guarantee that is the first thing that will come out of Milwaukee's mouth Milwaukee's fans' mouth as soon as they lose this season, if they do. Will be, if it was the bubble, this would have been our year, all that. That is the first thing that will. And that, honestly, any team that has an unfair shake in this bubble will come up with the bubble as the first reason as to why their team did not win, which is it sounds like a lame excuse at the end of the day, but watch me 3 months from now saying the same thing about the Rockets. Oh, it was the bubble. But
you say Brown too.
Yeah. But I think in terms of Milwaukee, they have just the depth and the size to get out of the East. The only thing that would stop them is Toronto. I think Toronto is the only team that can legitimately have a chance against them. I think Miami does pose a challenge, but I think that they're just more talented than Miami. Miami's still a very young team. This is a very experienced team, a veteran team. You also have I think Boston doesn't match up to them very well. I think that Indiana is not talented enough. I think that Philly is not in. They aren't. Philly's not deep enough to beat them. So for me, Milwaukee, the only team that Milwaukee will have, the only team I'm not sold on 100% beating Milwaukee is Toronto. I that airplane to go. That sounded like a sound effect almost, but that to me is the only team that has a shot at beating this Milwaukee team. And it ultimately does come down to Giannis, though. It comes down. This is Giannis' team, and this team will live by Giannis, and they will die by Giannis. And if Giannis comes out and plays the best basketball of his life, the Bucks have a good chance of hoisting the Larry O'Brien Trophy in the middle of October. Will that happen? We'll have to wait and find out. But yeah, so you guys, what I want you guys to let's play this out right before we sign off here. So let's do this. Let's agree on a top 8 in order, and then we'll work our way through a bracket. So Bucks are number 1. 1, 2, Milwaukee, Toronto.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Good. 3, 4. It would be 3 would be Boston. 4 would be Miami. Are we agreeing on that?
Yeah. I think it's just easy to go with what the standings are right now.
All right.
I think it's like
I
think 5 and 6 is like the only one that may switch.
So what do you think 5, 6 is, Chris?
I think Philly jumps Indiana to 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you good with that, Ross?
Yeah.
Philly being 5. All right. And then 7, 8. Are we going Orlando? Or are we going?
We'll go Orlando 7. Orlando 7, Brooklyn 8.
So that would mean Milwaukee gets Brooklyn in the first round.
Yeah, sweet.
Milwaukee wins.
Yep, sweet.
I got them in 4. Milwaukee in 4.
Yep, sweet.
Sweet. Chris.
Yep.
Are you giving Brooklyn a game?
Nope. Not.
Okay.
They could score, but they have a game they score a lot, but they won't win.
Toronto, Orlando, 2-7.
Raptors in 5.
Raptors in 5.
Yep.
I'll go Raptors in 4.
I'm gonna go 5.
5. Okay, so Raptors move on. 3, 6 would be that would be Boston and Indiana.
Let's assume Oladipo's not gonna play.
Assuming
I give Boston in 6. I still like Indiana. Yeah.
Chris.
I have Boston in 5. If Boston it's no Oladipo.
If it's with Oladipo or without?
Without.
I think without it's 5 games. I think with it's 7.
Yep, I think that too. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
And then 4, 5, Miami, Philly.
I got Miami in 7.
Miami in 7. Chris.
I have Miami in 6.
Miami in 6. I will go. You guys have sold me on Miami. I'll go Miami in. I'll go Miami in 6. Yeah, Miami in 6. That's 6.5. I think there's a good chance Game 7 could happen. We'll go 6. And then lastly, the 4, 5. 1, 4, Milwaukee, Miami. I'll go this. I'll be nice to Miami. I'll give them Milwaukee in 6.
I'll agree with that hesitantly, but
Yeah.
don't be surprised if he pull it off. But Milwaukee in 6.
That's me being generous. 5. I could see it going to game 6. Chris.
Yeah, I'll go Milwaukee in 6. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's 7, but 6.
Yeah. And then 2-3 Toronto, Boston.
Toronto in 6.
I'm actually a little bit. I actually think this could be a good one. I'm gonna go Toronto in 7.
Yeah. I'm gonna go Toronto in 5. I think Toronto's that good. And yeah, sue me. But Toronto, Milwaukee, we all agree this is a rematch of the conference finals. What do you guys got?
I got Milwaukee in 5.
Milwaukee in 5.
Bucks in 7.
Give me Toronto in 6. I'm still with Toronto.
I like it.
I really like Toronto. And I think Giannis is going to get gassed, to be honest. But yeah, that's a good place to stop today's episode. Thank you so much, Ross and Chris, for coming on to the podcast today. We will continue this with another episode featuring the Western Conference analysis 1 through 8 coming out in the next couple of days or so. And we will work our way towards closing the season here of Hitting the Field with the Hitting the Field podcast. Chances are the Hitting the Field podcast is approaching its final episodes as the HTF network expands for the fall. We have a lot of people working on the future of the show and the brand, and the future looks bright here at Hitting the Field. And looking forward to seeing what the crew behind me will do. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of one of the final Hitting the Field podcast editions, and catch you on the flip side.